8:49. Let's keep it with the phones here. I want to bring in Dr. Michael who's a member of the Governor's Physicians Advisory Group. Chris and Sabrina here. Dr. Mike, good morning.
Hi, good morning, guys.
Good morning. Yeah, I wanted to bring you on because, Dr. Hoa was mentioning this pilot project, I believe, that's going to be conducted over at the Japanese School of Guam, and he was mentioning your name. So if you could just provide us some information on this and how this came to be and what exactly it's about.
Oh, sure. Be happy to. We had a meeting with DOE a few weeks back about them opening up, and then after the meeting, we realized that there are a lot of smaller schools, summer schools, language schools, tutoring places, etc., that don't quite fall under DOE jurisdiction. And with being a much smaller size, we thought it'd be a great way to get kids kind of back into the classroom. Research shows that they lose a lot of learning over summer just in regular circumstances. And then two, if we could come up with some good guidelines, we could kind of see how it works in the summer. And if things work well, hopefully we can kind of spread it out to some of the slightly bigger schools before having full rollout in the fall with DOE. Because we understand that parents are understandably going to be very hesitant at first to try to send kids in. And this way we can have a smaller, more manageable size to kind of work with and see what works, what doesn't work, what we can work on. I do want to clarify, though, it's not just a Japanese school. Japanese school is kind of the first one that we heard of that was planned to open up. I think it was because in Japan they've already opened up.
Right.
They were planning to open up soon. So they were kind of on the ball about it. And so we kind of came up with our own baseline guidance that we created based on the 4 core principles of distancing, hygiene, tracing, keeping sick kids at home. And, we got together, we looked over what works in other countries. Some places in Scandinavia, they've been open now for about 6 weeks. Sweden is a famous example, never closed their schools for kids under the high school years. And Taiwan, I think, have stayed open as well. But for a lot of places, they've opened up in the past 6 weeks, maybe a little bit longer, and we haven't been seeing any outbreaks in schools over there. And more evidence is showing that children do not seem to be a significant vector of transmission. So kids are getting it, but when they get it, we've already kind of accepted that, okay, they're not going to get sick as often or as severely, with the exception that kids under age of 1 and past the teen years, if they do get sick, they do have a slightly higher risk of having a more severe course. But overall, we're seeing that kids are dealing with this a lot better than the adults. And so the concern when we open up the schools is really going to be more of protecting the children from the adults that are there at the school from giving.
So I'm sorry, what other schools then you said? No, it's not just Japanese School of Guam?
Oh, yeah. So, for example, once we have these guidelines, and once they get approved by public health, I think they would apply to, I don't know if there were SAT tutoring, is there a Sylvan Learning Center, stuff like that can open up. Because some of these, institutions, they will only have a handful of students at a given time. And so, with how we've been doing with responding to the pandemic, it feels like we should be able to keep them socially distanced in the classroom, give them proper hygiene guidance, and they should be able to keep getting their the benefits of their learning.
Right. So what does this all entail? You guys are just going to give them these guidelines. This is what you guys need to do, and then just monitor them.
So we're coming out with these guidelines, and after they get approved by public health, they'll be available to, I guess, any institution. And what we asked for the Japanese school, so we actually went on a site visit, just yesterday, and they were really excited to kind of show us, hey, this is how we're going to be socially distancing kids, in the parking lot, what we're going to do on the way in, the sinks that they put in. And so we just wanted to see, are the guidelines that we're coming up with reasonable and realistic? So, for example, one of the things that I'm sure we definitely had a long discussion about it, but we're not going to be requiring masks, for example. They'll be optional for kids under high school. And what we're seeing is that, kids are probably going to go run around the playground. They'll touch each other, get pretty close. And the mask probably might not be super effective, in my opinion, especially if they get all sweaty and dirty. But I do understand that different places, like if they were at a tutoring center, they're not having a playground, and if the parents would feel more comfortable about sending their kids there with a mask on, and maybe the school would want to make it a requirement on their end. So they're free to go more stringently than what we put out, but we're putting out kind of like the basic guidelines.
Doc, so if we're doing these studies in tutoring centers and a Japanese school, which is obviously way smaller population than the public schools, are we able to just copy paste these same parameters and mitigation guidelines over to the public school system, or do you think that there's going to be any kind of fine tuning of the results of the study?
Oh, that's a great question. So definitely, I do think it's not going to be an easy copy and paste. Clearly, there's going to be challenges once we get to the bigger, denser schools. For example, if we want to have about 4 feet in between kids, is what we're asking for right now. But I understand that the classrooms at the public schools can be a little bit more crowded, and sometimes I've been told that they can have difficulty even getting kids like 2 feet apart. So they might have to stagger their classes. DOE is working on this on their end too, so I'm sure they're very cognizant of this. I do want to say really quick though, it's not really a study in that we're not going to come out with like a research paper and but what we're doing is
what do you call it then, Doc?
So I think it's just a pilot project to see if we can open up schools safely. And at some point, whether it's this summer, whether it's later in the fall, maybe next year, at some point, some student will likely, or staff member will likely pick up COVID and test positive at the school. And so this has happened in other countries. And the important thing will be to see, like, hey, can we, trace their contacts? Can we isolate them? Can we make sure it doesn't spread to the other kids? And if we can do that well, then okay, that one child might have to stay at home, until for the 14 days or until they can come back. But it means we can still keep the school open. And then, if for some unforeseen circumstance the virus just behaves differently here than it does in, Scandinavia, than it does in Singapore, Taiwan, New Zealand, and we find that, we are having outbreaks in school, which as far as I know, that hasn't happened anywhere in the world yet. But if that happens, then hey, I would rather have it in a smaller setting, so less kids.
What about this thing we're seeing, Doc, in the national news? I saw a story a few days ago. Multi-system inflammatory syndrome from COVID. Now, and we're talking about kids, right? Is this something that we need to be concerned about here on Guam? Because we've had a 12-year-old test positive for COVID. We just found out one of the positives yesterday was a female aged 10 to 19, so we don't know her age. But is this something that we should be concerned about? Because in reading the national reports, as a parent, I was pretty bothered and worried by it.
Oh, yes. The MIS, the multi-system inflammatory syndrome, is really scary. It seems to be very rare. I think estimates go from like 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 1,000 of kids who actually get COVID. And it's from the early reports, they're saying it looks a lot like another kind of well-known condition called Kawasaki's disease.
Right.
The tricky part with Kawasaki's disease is that even though it's like a blood vessel disease, ultimately, it seems to be triggered by viruses. And so we've seen, even before COVID came out, we would have pockets of this, even in Guam. And, and then because it seems to be, it's just such a severe case, most children, with supportive care seem to do okay, but it just, we don't know yet, right? So, and the other thing that makes it a little bit trickier for us is we don't know exactly the prevalence of COVID on the island. We can guess with statistics, but we don't know like how many people have already been exposed. So we'll just have to really be vigilant and look out for it.
Well, very interesting insight, Doc.
And when does this pilot project begin? Is when they start school? This Japanese school?
I guess it depends on when public health gives their approval
to their guidelines.
to our guidelines, and then if they can, I think the recovery panel also needs to take a look at it.
So it hasn't even started. It's just a thought.
No, the guidelines have been made. It's been presented to the public health, and their initial response seems to be pretty favorable. I would hate to. I don't want to give us a certain date and then push back. But hopefully soon.
Well, thanks, Doc. Hey, we got your number. I mean, man, you got a really cool Facebook page. We saw you had a lot of really neat videos about COVID. They're really kind of geared towards younger viewers, right? So, I mean, we love what you're doing.
You're a pediatrician, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's with One Love Rastafari Pediatrics.
No, just One Love Pediatrics.
Just One Love, not Rastafari, guys. To clarify, okay? We don't have the rules and regs yet.
Well, thanks, Doctor.
Oh, yes, sure.
Yeah, Doc, we'd love to get you on maybe, weekly and get some tips for kids or whatever. And this,
we're getting ready to get back school. Well, school may or may not start, but still good information.
Yeah. Thank you, Doc.
All right, my pleasure, guys. Have a good day.
Wash your hands.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. There you go, Dr. Michael.
One Love Guam, right?
Yeah, One Love Guam.